The Binge Cure with Dr. Nina. Today, you are going to learn how to outsmart emotional eating and live a life of happiness and joy without giving up the foods you love. Now, here is Dr. Nina.
Hi, welcome to the Binge Cure with Dr. Nina. I am your host, Dr. Nina Savelle-Rocklin. I'm a psychoanalyst, and I am here to help you liberate yourself from emotional eating, take control of your life, and feel good in your body, all without dieting, spending hours in the gym, or counting a single macro. It is not what you are eating that is the problem. It is what is eating at you. So today's topic is when food is not love, 10 reasons why Mother's Day is hard. Now, if you are watching the live stream on Instagram, you can see what my t-shirt says. For those of you who are listening on Voice America or any other podcast channel, my t-shirt says, Pink Floyd, the dark side of your mom, which of course is a take on Pink Floyd, The Dark Side of the Moon, which my dad used to listen to incessantly. It drove me crazy. I could be just fine to never hear that song again. But today we are not here to talk about dads. We are here to talk about moms and Mother's Day. So one of the oldest psychoanalytic jokes in the world goes like this. If it's not one thing, it's your mother. This is why I did not become a stand-up comedian, folks. Yes. All right. Well, you get the idea. If it's not one thing, it's your mother. Our relationship with our mothers has a huge impact on how we see ourselves, and it also affects our relationship with food. So today we're going to really talk about how to heal your hungry heart and look at how toxic mothering affects your relationship with yourself and with food. And by the way, if you are listening live on Voice America and you want to join the conversation, if you have a question or anything like that, the number is 866-472-5792. If you are on Instagram, feel free to drop a comment in the comment box or a question. So if we're raised in an environment where our mothers are nurturing and supportive, we are more likely to have a very positive self-image and a healthy relationship with food. But if our mothers are controlling or critical or neglectful or many other things we're going to get to in a little bit, that can lead to a negative self-image and disordered eating habits. Because after all, on some level, food equals nurturing. Food equals mothering. Now, what is this food-mother connection? Why do we turn to food when we're stressed, upset, lonely, or tired, or anything else? And the answer is in our earliest experiences of love and bonding and attachment, that's linked to being fed as an infant. When we see a parent nourishing a baby, feeding a baby, it's an exchange of love. That baby's being held, that baby's feeling loved and blissful. And our earliest memories are often of being held and loved by our parents, which creates a sense of safety and security that becomes intertwined with the experience of being fed. So we begin to associate food with the warm feelings of connection to somebody else. And as we grow up, we might use food, consciously or not, to get back those feelings of love and connection, especially when we feel disconnected, lonely, feel bad about ourselves, or just feel bad. So, or bored, or any of the things. Although boredom is often just an umbrella emotion, which means it covers up other things. We often think we're bored when we're really lonely or empty. And food becomes a substitute for the soothing presence of another person. Now, people, as we know, people can be unpredictable and unreliable and unavailable, but food is predictable, reliable, and available. It is always there when we need it. And it gives us that reliable sense of comfort, familiarity, escape. Whatever we need it to do, it is there for us. It gives us some kind of security and constancy when we live in an unpredictable world. So it's really important to recognize the impact that your mothering experience had on you because becoming more aware of these patterns helps you start to maybe heal those original wounds and start to treat yourself differently, learn new ways of comforting yourself, responding to yourself, supporting yourself, nurturing yourself, so you don't do that with food. And by the way, there is this illusion, the illusion of the perfect mother. Now, I often say there's no such thing as perfection, except in isosceles triangles, because I like to say isosceles for some reason. I don't know why. But when it comes to being a person, when it comes to relationships, there's no such thing as perfect, being perfect. So we want to aim for progress, not perfection. But we have this illusion of the perfect mother who is portrayed in the media, right? We've all seen her on a screen. She's nurturing, she's loving, she's selfless. She's responsible for the emotional and physical well-being of the children while also managing the household, supporting her partner, and maybe running a Fortune 500 business. Why not? She's superwoman. She's expected to be patient and kind and to prioritize her family's needs over all else. Well, that mother doesn't exist. And Mother's Day can be a really hard time for those people who don't have anything even close to that ideal mother. And it could bring up sadness and disappointment, or for people who have problems with infertility or problems who have lost a mother. I mean, there's so many reasons why Mother's Day can be tough. And when you see social media or you see commercials or whatever, when I was a single mom, I would just stay. My kid and I would stay in our condo. We would not go out because every time I went out, I would just see happy families everywhere. And even though I love my daughter so much, and we always had a great Mother's Day together, it was also really hard to see these happy families celebrating their mom and all that stuff. It can be a painful reminder of what's missing. And it can trigger feelings of guilt or shame for not appreciating the mother you have, or for resenting the mother you have or had. And for people who, of course, who have lost their mothers, it's especially difficult because it's a time of grieving and awareness of loss, or struggling, like I said before, with infertility, something that if you desperately want to be a mother, Mother's Day can be hard. Mommy Dearest is a memoir by Christina Crawford, who details her difficult, to say the least, abusive relationship with her mother, Joan Crawford, the actress from the 40s. And so the term Mommy Dearest has become like kind of a cultural reference for a controlling or abusive mother figure. And although not all bad mothers, not all toxic mothers look like that. I mean, that's the penultimate awful mother. Not all mothers, thank God, are that horrible and vicious. There are some personality types that are associated with toxic mothering. So identifying the kind of mother you had or have can help you better understand yourself, and it can kind of shine a light on a path to creating some change. So today I'm going to go through the 10 types of mothers. And if one of them relates to you, please let me know. Drop a comment. I'm going to explain how this kind of mother has impacted you, your relationship with food, and your relationship with yourself. So the first one is intrusive mothers. They want to know everything. They want to know everything that's going on in their kids' lives. They read diaries. They snoop through text messages. They demand to know what their kid is doing or has done or is thinking at all times. And while these mothers may have really good intentions, again, we know what they say about intentions. The road to hell is paved with them. Their behavior can really damage their children's sense of autonomy and privacy. So when kids feel like their every move is being monitored and scrutinized, it can lead to a sense of helplessness and needing to create walls and take space. And by imposing their will on their children and failing to respect boundaries, intrusive mothers can inadvertently drive people towards behaviors that are harmful to their health. Because this kind of mothering is often associated with withdrawal from other people. If your mother is intrusive, hey, it's not like other people seem all that safe. And so often, if you've had this kind of mother, you're going to isolate yourself a little bit as a way of keeping people out, dealing with potentially intrusive questions, or dealing with boundary violations. You don't have to deal with those if you're not connected to people. And if you're not connected to people, that leaves you empty. And if you're empty, you might symbolically be filling up with food. And again, it's not like you're saying, oh, I feel this inner emptiness and loneliness. Let me go eat something to fill it. We're not consciously aware that that's what we're doing, but it is a way of using food, which again represents mothering and nurturing, as a way to fill up on your terms. So ultimately, the key to creating change, if you had this kind of mother, is to learn to assert yourself and create boundaries. And setting boundaries and communicating clearly with your mother, if she's still around, or anyone else who is similarly intrusive, it creates a sense of empowerment and autonomy, and it helps you feel more fulfilled in your relationships. And when you are more fulfilled in your relationships, guess what? You don't need to do it through food. Then there are, I call them the mini-me mothers. The mini-me syndrome is like, it's a parenting style that it erodes your sense of individuality. And these mothers want their children to reflect them and live up to their standards of what their kids should be, instead of cultivating their children's unique personalities and interests. So they want their kids to be mini versions of them. As an example, Kelsey, I'm calling her Kelsey, not her real name. She recalled really wanting to learn the drums when she was a kid. And her mother said, "Don't be ridiculous. I like the piano, not the drums." Like there was no room for Kelsey to like drums if her mother liked the piano. No sense of individuality. And another mother told her daughter, "You can't vote Democrat. We're Republicans." Again, these types of parents cannot fathom the idea that their children have separate wishes, ideas, and beliefs, that their children are, in fact, separate people and not just the narcissistic extension of them. And the problem with this is that it can make you feel like you're not allowed to be authentic. You're not allowed to be true to yourself. And you feel like you've got to conform to your mother's expectations and beliefs, which is limiting and stifling. And this leads to frustration and resentment, guilt. You're going against your mother, so you want to, but you feel guilty, and depression. And eating or binge eating, they are ways of managing those emotional states. And sometimes guilt over resenting your mother can turn into guilt over, oh my God, I can't believe I ate that. And one way of rebelling against these pressures to conform and basically give up yourself and be who your mother wants you to be is through weight. My client, Annalise, again, every time I use a name, it's not a real name. I have to say that for licensing purposes. She was 100 pounds overweight, and she was covered in tattoos. And her mother wanted her to be skinny and look appropriate, whatever that is. And Annalise was like, yeah, my mother wanted me to look like her. Too bad for her. So for Annalise and anyone with this kind of mother, having a bigger body or rebelling through your body may be a way of saying, hey, this is my life, this is my body, and you cannot control my body. So it's a way of rebellion. It's a way of rebelling, but that rebellion, of course, only hurts you. It's just as damaging to yourself as dealing with an intrusive mini-me mother, because mini-me mothers are, of course, also intrusive. There's a lot of overlap with this. So again, it's really important to assert yourself in a healthy way instead of rebelling or, feeling guilty for not conforming, and then that guilt get transferred to guilt over food or weight. And if your mother cannot recognize and accept your uniqueness, if she cannot appreciate who you are as a separate, unique, individual person, then grieve what you did not get and what you deserve. We all deserve to be appreciated for who we are and not be held in contempt or disdain or be criticized or judged because we're different from how people expected us to be. Basically, people have this kind of mothers have this fantasy of who you're going to be. And then when you fail to fit that ideal, they're really disappointed. Of course they're disappointed. A fantasy is always better than a reality. But we can't live up to a fantasy. And then we're not appreciated for who we are. So grieve what you did not get. Grieve the fact that you did not get unconditional love and regard for who you are. And then be the mother to yourself you didn't get. Encourage yourself to pursue your own interests and your own path in life. Because when you develop a sense of self, an individual sense of self, and you feel good about you, then you don't need food as an escape or a way to rebel. Then there are on kind of the opposite end of the spectrum, the indifferent mothers. And there are many reasons why mothers might be indifferent. They might be depressed. They might not be interested in parenting. They might have had children because it was expected of them, or surprise, and then they felt like they had to, or a lack of nurturing in their own childhood. People who are not nurtured often don't know how to nurture other people. Other people who are not nurtured are really good at nurturing and taking care of everybody else, but they treat themselves the way they were treated. So maybe if you had an indifferent mother who did not nurture you, ask yourself, are you taking care of everybody else in your life the way you wished you had been taken care of? And then is food taking care of you? If your mother was indifferent, it can leave you feeling like you're not important, you're not valued, you're not valuable. And you might yearn and wish and be hungry for a level of connection that your mother can't or won't give, which feels really painful. And this can lead to eating so much that you're in physical pain. So many times people say to me, what's wrong with me? I ate until I was in physical pain and I still kept eating. Clearly, I have an addiction or a willpower problem. And I tell them, no, I think you are possibly turning emotional pain into physical pain, because physical pain is easier to manage than emotional pain. It's a way of expressing your emotional pain. So you might fill up on food as a way of, again, filling the emptiness for what you never got. You might eat to fill the void left by this indifferent mother, but then feel humiliated and ashamed just for wanting the kind of love and connection to feel special that you never got. Just longing for that kind of attention, being hungry for love, starving for attention can also feel humiliating. Which, by the way, if you have that, that sense of, I want it so much, but it's horrible. That is sometimes associated with bulimia. Again, sometimes, not always. It's like it's a conflict. I want something so much, but then I kind of hate that I want it. I find it humiliating. So let me just get rid of it. And that gets enacted with food. So the key to change is, again, to be more nurturing and supportive toward yourself. Heal the unresolved feelings of hurt and anger and anything in between, anything else that you feel as a result of having a mother who's kind of like, kind of a meh, indifferent. She's not mean, but she's not super loving. It's hurtful. But the more that you mourn what happened and also what didn't happen, this is the piece of grieving and mourning that often gets left out. We we mourn what happened, but we don't mourn what didn't happen. So if you have an intrusive mother, a mini-me mother, an indifferent mother, or any of the other types of mothers that I'm about to describe, except the last one, which we'll get to that, you gotta mourn the mother you had and also mourn what you didn't get to have. So important. Then there's this is a good one, the intrusive and indifferent mothers. They're intrusive and indifferent. They're both. It's like the worst of both worlds. They're overly invested in certain aspects of their children's lives, like academic performance or extracurricular activities. What are you doing? How are you performing in these areas? Or, how are you doing at work? Have you gotten a promotion? Where were you in your class? What law school did you get into? Like, all about what you're doing. They're overly intrusively interested in that, but they neglect other areas like emotional support or other ways in which you need nurturing. So this inconsistency is not only confusing, it leads to isolation and disconnection because you might feel like you're not allowed to express your emotions or seek support, or you're always supposed to perform. You have to be a human doing, not a human being. And it's just go, do, don't have feelings about it. And then what happens if you start to have a feeling, which, those mothers are not interested in your feelings. God forbid, have a feeling. What's that? No, you're a human doing, not a human being. So what happens when you start to have feelings? You go, uh-oh, can't have this. And guess what takes you away from your feelings? Binge eating, emotional eating. It distracts you. It numbs you. You go into that binge zone. You're not thinking. You're not feeling. You're just in that zone for a while at least. And this kind of mothering can also, as can they all, lead you to turn away from relationships with other people because they're dangerous and scary. And who wants that? Who wants someone who's intrusive or, not interested in your internal emotional life or indifferent and all the other things? Well, then that leads you to have a relationship with food instead. And again, people are unpredictable, unavailable, and unreliable. Food is predictable, reliable, and available. And remember, you deserve to be supported and nurtured in all areas of your life. It's not just about what you are doing and what you are accomplishing. It's about what you need, what you feel, what you want, what you don't want, whatever that is. And when you give yourself the support you need, the support you did not get from the person who ought to have given it to you, you will stop using food as a source of comfort or distraction. All right, then there's the little girl mother. Little girl mothers, they are the ones who rely on their children to take care of them emotionally. They often share their problems with their kids. They ask for their opinions. They expect their kids to be concerned about them and care about their well-being, but they don't give their kids the same concern or care or in investment. It's often called a parentified child, a child of whatever age who has to take care of their parents, but their parents do not really take care of them emotionally. So when you have this kind of a mother, you feel like you've got to take care of your mother instead of being taken care of by your mother. And when you're mothering your mother, guess what? Nobody's mothering you. And as you can probably guess, food, which represents mothering, that takes care of you. So if you can't turn to your mother for nurturing and support and all of that, you can't give it to yourself because that was never modeled for you. You can get it through food. So you take care of your mother and food takes care of you. And often I call them little girl mothers because these mothers, they often are just like, they talk in a little girl voice and they're like, oh, they just, they act like little girls, not grown adult women. And you can change this dynamic. If this is resonating with you and you have a little girl mother, here's what you do. You start prioritizing yourself and start setting boundaries with your mother. You prioritize your own emotional well-being and you start saying no, which is really hard to do when you have like, oh, you're not coming home. You're not coming over. What do you mean? What am I going to do? Really pulls at your heartstrings, right? Well, guess what? You matter too. So don't mistake the little girl voice for a little girl. Your mother is not a little girl. She's a grown up woman. And you get to treat her as such. If you feel like you got to take care of your mother and she feels like a poor little girl who can't take care of herself and can't cope, remember that little girl voice is not the truth. She's not a little girl. Treat her like a grown woman that she is in years, if not emotional maturity, and take care of yourself. It might feel mean, but by saying no to a little girl mother or any of these kinds of mothers, you are saying yes to yourself. And the more that you take care of yourself, the less food will take care of you. Okay, I have about a minute and a half before my break, but I'm going to get started on the next one, which is, oh, this is a good one. Narcissistic mothers. Narcissistic mothers, and again, there's overlap because the little girl mother is pretty darn narcissistic, right? But self-absorbed, right? They're all self-absorbed. They're all narcissistic to some extent. But narcissistic mothers, overtly narcissistic mothers, are primarily focused on themselves and their own needs, often at the expense of their children or anyone else. They may view their children as extensions of themselves and demand that their children meet their needs, their expectations, rather than considering their children's own desires and goals. And when I say children's, by the way, I am not just talking about children, I'm talking about any age of a being their sons, their daughters, right? Of any age. Because this can happen when you are an adult. You know, it doesn't just happen when you're a child, it happens when you're an adult too. So it's if you have a narcissistic mother, you may feel like you struggle with feelings of neglect, misattunement, always feeling overlooked or dismissed in favor of your mother's needs. You might feel like you're never good enough or you can never meet her high standards. And with that, I'm going to take a 2-minute break. If you're with me on Instagram, I'm going to stay with you. Otherwise, if you're listening, I will be back in 2 minutes. See you then.
All clear, back in 2.
Thanks, Jordan. Hey, everybody on Instagram. Which of these mothers are resonating with you? Or are any of them resonating with you? Or are you here? Let me know you're here by dropping an emoji of some kind. And this is also the time you can ask me any question. We're not on air right now. So if you want to ask me a question about your situation, how to deal with anything, we have a couple minutes till we're back. Are you here? I don't think so. Okay. Okay, well, I'm just going to hang out until we're back from break.
We're coming back in about 15 seconds.
Thank you.
Welcome back to the Binge Cure with Dr. Nina. Have questions for Dr. Nina? Join her on the show at 866-472-5792. That's 866-472-5792. Now back to the show.
Welcome back to the Binge Cure with Dr. Nina. Today we are talking about toxic mothering and your relationship with food. And we talked about different kinds of toxic mothers and how they relate to your relationship with food. Talked about intrusive mothers, mini-me mothers, indifferent, and intrusive mothers, little girl mothers, and now we're talking about narcissistic mothers. So again, if you have a narcissistic mother, you may struggle with feelings of neglect, mistreatment. You may feel constantly overlooked or scrutinized or dismissed, and you may feel like you are never good enough and you can never meet their high standards. And in some cases, narcissistic mothers can use their children of any age, again, their little children or their adult children, as a way of boosting their own self-esteem rather than providing emotional support and nurturing to their children. So it's kind of like you're there for your mom. Your mom is not there for you. They may demand that you achieve certain goals, that you become a doctor and not a marine biologist, which is what you want to do. No, she wants you to become a doctor, so you feel like you got to become a doctor to make her happy and to earn her love, things like that. They don't consider what is best for their children. They consider what they think their children should do. So know this: you deserve to be treated with love and respect and compassion, and you deserve to be treated as a separate person. Setting boundaries, learning to prioritize your own emotional well-being, trusting yourself when you have a narcissistic parent or any of the parents I've talked about, any of the mothers I've talked about, you can learn not to trust yourself. And you can feel really confused and anguished and uncertain. And when you have those strong feelings and you don't know how to support, encourage, and nurture yourself, you might use food for that purpose. So that is how these types of mothering styles affect your relationship with yourself and then with food. So really recognizing the impact of these mothering styles, it's everything to do with building your self-esteem and learning to set boundaries. Then we come to critical mothers. And again, mothers can be intrusive, critical, in all the things in one person. So there is a lot of overlap as I talk about these. So critical mothers, they focus on their children's flaws and shortcomings and often point them out in a critical and negative way. An example is you get your report card. On the report card are 4 A's and 1 B. What does a critical mother do? She says, "What's with the B? How come you didn't get all A's? What do you mean you got a B?" Totally overlooking all the A's that you did get. Or let's say you got an A minus. Instead of like, "Whoa, straight A's, that's amazing. I love it. Good for you." It's, "Well, why didn't you get an A? Why is that an A minus?" Like nothing you do is ever good enough. That's how you feel. And they use criticism as a form of control or manipulation. And they try to shape their children into who they want them to be rather than accepting them for who they are, discovering who they are. And if you have had a critical mother, you may struggle with feelings of inadequacy. You may internalize her critical voice. And you may be a perfectionist. You may, go to a review at your job and they tell you the 4 amazing things that you did, good for you. And then they tell you the one thing that you need to work on. And what are you going to do? You're going to criticize yourself. Oh my God, I can't believe the one thing I need to work on. And then you, like your mother did to you, you do the same thing to yourself and you completely dismiss anything that is good and you criticize yourself for not being perfect, essentially. And then you feel bad. And because we can't criticize ourselves into feeling better, we can't criticize ourselves and support ourselves at the same time. So often, if you have internalized your critical mother's voice or parent's voice, I'm talking about mothers because it's almost Mother's Day, but of course, this applies to all parents. It's not a gender thing. Then you feel bad and you may turn to food to feel better for comfort or escape. It's really essential to turn that inner critic into a friend instead of attacking yourself all the time. Because when you can hold the things that you don't do perfectly with the things that you do really well and feel good about yourself overall and give yourself room to grow without feeling like there's something wrong with you. If you can stop being so hypercritical of yourself, you are not going to feel so bad. And when you don't feel so bad, you don't need food to feel better. And when you can support yourself and be kind to yourself and encouraging of yourself, guess what? You don't need food for that purpose because you're there for yourself. You don't need to escape yourself or sedate your mind or any of those things. So, if you struggle with the feelings of low self-esteem, if you struggle with feelings of inadequacy, if you feel like you could never live up to other people's high standards, chances are you probably had a very critical parent, which of course leads to self-doubt, lack of confidence in yourself, and a lack of an ability to soothe yourself because you have probably inherited that critical voice. So what once was relational between you and your mother now becomes internal between parts of you. Whereas once she said to you, "Why didn't you do that right? How could you have done that? That's not perfect." Now you say to yourself, "Oh my God, how could I have done that? How could I have missed that? It's not perfect." And again, remember that as an explanation, but not an excuse, critical mothers may be dealing with their own insecurities through you. They may use criticism as a way of deflecting attention away from their own shortcomings. So it becomes about, oh, you have the problem, not me. And they may be overly focused on your quote unquote flaws, according to them, as a way of distracting from their own. That is an explanation. It does not excuse it. You are not defined by your mother's criticisms or anyone else's. So challenge the ideas that you have about yourself as a result of this way of being treated. And if you wouldn't criticize someone else, if your friend said to you, "Oh, I had my review at work and they told me these 4 great things that I'm doing and the one thing I need to work on," you wouldn't say to your friend, "Oh my God, you suck. What's wrong with you? Why aren't you perfect?" You'd say, "Oh, that's great." Okay, be that to yourself. Practice makes progress. Then there are the controlling mothers. These mothers try to control every aspect of their children's lives, from what they wear to who they spend time with. They are domineering. They are dismissive of their children's desires or opinions. They believe that their way is the only way. And children of controlling mothers also struggle with feelings of powerlessness. It's like you can't make a decision yourself. You don't learn to make decisions if someone else is always telling you what to do. And this can lead to, again, frustration with yourself, lack of self-confidence, not trusting your own thoughts, not being able to assert yourself, and just feeling bad. And sometimes controlling mothers are driven by a desire to protect their children. But they don't help their children learn to cope with life. That's the problem. They're trying to protect them. They're trying to make sure they're safe, but then the child never learns to trust himself or herself. It prevents you from developing a sense of independence and self-reliance. So you deserve to have control over your life. And by the way, how does this play out in food? Well, if you feel like control is an issue and you feel controlled by somebody else, the one way they cannot control you is what you eat. I've had many, many patients who had extremely controlling parents who put them on diets at a young age, and their form of rebellion was, oh, you're trying to control me? You put me on a very restrictive diet and I'm 9 years old. Well, guess what? You can't control me totally because I am going to go to the store and use my babysitting money. Well, I guess they wouldn't be 9. Let's say 12. I'm going to use my babysitting money to get some candy and you can't stop me. So controlling mothers can cause food rebellion because often they are controlling with food and weight. Don't eat that. You shouldn't eat that. Taking food away from their children and saying, you can't have that, things like that. Oh, it's the worst. Remember, you have the decisions, you have the right to make decisions over your own life and live life on your terms. And if you are controlled by your mother, you might be rebelling or you might be overly focused on trying to control food instead. So if you're really overly controlled with food and then that ends always, as in the diet binge cycle, dieting, control, all of that leads to binging or emotional eating, then really look at whether you were controlled and how, if you have displaced that onto food. Then, let me see. Oh, I have enough time. Okay. Then there's addicted mothers, whether it's whatever they're addicted to. And growing up with an addicted mother, whether it's drugs or alcohol or sometimes other addictions, it means experiencing neglect, abuse, and instability. Even someone who's a mother who's addicted to work addiction it's a thing, and it is a virtue and a vice. Because if you have a mother's working all the time, then you're neglected. Work becomes more important than you. If you have a mother who's using drugs or alcohol or things like that, gambling, you're neglected. The thing that they're addicted to becomes more important than you. And that just makes you feel like not a priority. You don't get the support, the stability, the consistency that you need, because their addiction, their behavior causes them to prioritize their own wishes, their own addiction, their own selves over you. And often people who have a mother like this, they struggle with feelings of abandonment because they have been emotionally abandoned and sometimes physically abandoned, literally abandoned. The addiction essentially takes your mother away from you. And then you also experience guilt because kids often blame themselves. It's like the kids, what is that old thing about sitting a kid down and saying, we're getting divorced. And the kid says, what did I do? Kids are naturally egocentric. So when kids feel bad or they're treated badly, they think they've somehow done something wrong or there's something about them that has caused their parents, their mothers, to treat them this way. So when kids feel bad, they think there's something bad about them. They think they're too much. They think they're not enough. They think they did something. They mistake abuse for punishment. And that's really important. And then because kids blame themselves and believe they are somehow responsible for their mother's addiction, they're like if she really loved me, if I were good enough, she'd choose me and not do that behavior, or not choose drinking, or not choose work, or not choose gambling, or whatever it is. And that guilt can then later become displaced onto food, feeling guilty over eating too much, or guilty over what you weigh, things like that. But originally it comes from a lack of emotional support, a lack of stability that leads to anxiety, depression, PTSD, just feeling bad about yourself because of the way that you were treated. And if you feel bad and you don't have a reliable way of feeling better because mom's just off doing whatever and no one's there for you, then food takes care of you. Food, which represents mothering and nurturing, takes care of you. So remember that you deserve to be treated with love, respect. You deserve to feel good in this world. And you have to heal the wounds caused by these kinds of mothers. These are wounds that we don't like, time just doesn't heal all. Time just doesn't heal these wounds. We have to actively heal by going through a grieving process of what happened, working through it, processing it with the feelings, because it is not just something that happened in the past, it is happening in the present. Again, if you have a critical mother, you probably are very critical of yourself. It's passed on. It continues, only now you're doing it to you. Or you just neglect yourself because you were neglected. And I've saved the best for last. The ideal mother, but not in the sense of a fantasy. The appropriate mother. A nurturing mother. Having a nurturing mother is a wonderful experience because it provides you with the emotional support and care that you need to grow and to thrive and to feel good about yourself. A nurturing mother consistently shows appropriate amounts of curiosity, not intrusively, shows appropriate care about your emotional and physical well-being, and allows you to have your own identity and supports you in your personal growth and your development. Children of nurturing mothers feel a sense of security and comfort. They know their mom is there for them. And by the way, this is the difference between having a mother, which are those other kinds of toxic mothers, and having a mom. There is a difference. A mother is a person's relationship to you. A mom is her way of treating you. So if you had a nurturing mom, your mom is there for you, cares about you, and it leads to good things, right? Leads to self-confidence and a sense of autonomy and efficacy and independence and a sense of self-worth and self-esteem and an ability to nurture yourself, self-soothe, comfort yourself when times are tough. And even if you did not have a nurturing mother growing up, a nurturing mom, it is never too late to cultivate that nurturing response to yourself. You can learn to treat yourself with kindness. You can learn to be nurturing and supportive and encouraging and all of the things that you ought to have gotten in that perfect world that we don't live in, alas, from your mom. So just as you may treat a friend or a family member in a nurturing, supportive way, but you don't treat yourself that way. Maybe you treat yourself the way you were treated, but you treat other people the way you wish you had been treated. Does that ring a bell? Does that resonate? Well, if that is the case, then, hey, the good news is it's the ability is there. You know how to be nurturing and kind. All you have to do is give that to yourself. And that is an active process at first. It takes a lot of awareness and thinking and realizing when you're being critical to yourself, when you're abandoning yourself, when you're, doing things for other people because they expect it of you. And, oh, that's just like how you were raised, all the things. But you can do it. You have to be gentle with yourself when you make mistakes. You have to be more understanding. You have to practice self-compassion instead of self-criticism. And self-care, setting time aside for you. Another way that food can get in here is that if you don't take care of yourself, and as I've said, food can take care of you, sometimes eating is the only way we get me time. I've seen this over and over again in my practice with patients and clients is they're taking care of other people all day long, whether it's at work or at home or both. And then, they get their only time for themselves, their only me time is sneaking away to eat something because they don't feel like they have the right to take time for themselves to do something they actually love. You deserve to develop a nurturing relationship with yourself, even if you didn't have a nurturing mother growing up. And ultimately, cultivating that nurturing response to yourself can help you in so many areas of life. It helps you overcome challenges. It helps you get through difficulty. It leads you to a greater sense of self and happiness and fulfillment in your life. When you know that you have you to support yourself and encourage yourself and comfort and soothe yourself, you can do just about anything, right? And keep in mind that there are two mothers. Now the psychoanalyst in me is coming out. There are two mothers. There's the mother who raised you and the mother you internalize. There's the mother that you actually had or have or both, and the mother in your head. So when you can, I like to say, have a psychological exorcism, get that mother in your head out, and you're no longer affected by your past. You're no longer criticizing yourself or indifferent to yourself or avoiding intrusion from other people, and you have healthy relationship with yourself and other people. You're not going to use food to cope with sadness, emptiness, frustration, loneliness, or any other painful or upsetting state. So ultimately, I do want to say this: our parents, our mothers, did the best they could given their situation. They did the best they could at the time. And that is an explanation, not an excuse. But it is easy to look back and see the flaws in their parenting. You also have to recognize, it's not about blame, it's about explain. We're not pointing fingers. We're saying, okay, this is what happened. This is how it affected me. I want to understand how it affected me. And that's how you create change in the present. Because by doing so, you can heal the wounds of your past and absolutely create a healthier, happier relationship with you, the world, and of course, with food. And again, I'm not saying it is easy. It is not easy. But like anything worth doing is hard, it is challenging, and it is ultimately so rewarding. So that is our show for today. Thank you so much for joining me here on The Binge Cure with Dr. Nina. I'm here every Thursday at noon Pacific. And if you want a deeper dive into this topic or anything else having to do with binge eating and emotional eating, please check out my best-selling book, The Binge Cure: 7 Steps to Outsmart Emotional Eating. It is available on Amazon in all formats, including Audible, if you want me to read it to you. And I also have the accompanying The Binge Cure Journal, which is a workbook that is really kind of an amazing way to help you take the concepts in the book and put them into practice. So stay curious, not critical. Be nice to yourself. And I will see you next week. Bye for now.
All clear. Great show.
Thank you.
No problem.
Get those Mother's Day flowers.
I definitely will. Hope you enjoy
All
your
right.
Mother's Day as well.
Thank you. See you
Take care.
next week. Bye.